Let's talk and pivot over to John Brooks, another player playing in the Bundesliga for Wolfsburg, center back who I thought was one of our focal points going into qualifying when it started, but now he doesn't even get called in for some of our most important games, or even our games that aren't that important. Heath, Pearce. Now, Gregg Berhalter got asked about Brooks's omission, and he said, I had a good conversation with him and explained to him that this is our thinking for the window. This is what we chose to do in this window. It doesn't determine his future with the national team, and I think that's a very important distinction. What do you say about Gregg Berhalter's thoughts on John Brooks, and what at this point, if you're John Brooks, you got to think, if I'm not involved, there's no way they're going to call me in when the World Cup rolls around.
I mean, if that is actually the case, then John Brooks has to be confused, right? But I still think there's something bigger to it than this. Something had to have happened somewhere along the way. Now, do I think that it's hard to bring in a John Brooks and not play him? Yeah, I do. Because if you look at the fact that he plays for a team the size of Wolfsburg, he plays week in and week out in the Bundesliga. Yes, he's leaving at the end of the season there. But it's hard to bring a player in like that who's naturally left-footed, probably our best passer of the ball outside of Tim Ream, who's also not in, and then put him on the bench, right? I think that leaves a lot of room for criticism that it's probably easier if you're not going to play him or not going to start him to just not bring him in and know that you have cover in a different type of way. We've seen with John Brooks that when he gets pulled and dragged around the field, he is extremely vulnerable, right? You get that beeping sound when he starts to go backwards because he's a big, long body. He gets pulled in and out of spaces. He gets spun a lot in the games that he's had. He's a fantastic passer of the ball, unbelievable in the air, and has all these other skill sets. But at the speed of the international game, when the game is on the line, he seems to have shown a little bit of vulnerability of just getting spun around and pulled out of positions that I think have cost the U.S. men's national team. But I still think that there's something bigger to that. And obviously he's gone on to kind of have this take as well on social where his American identity is at stake for those of you that are watching this. Some have questioned over many years. We Americans have all been down and out at different times. But we always fight back, and I plan to do the same. I like his response. I like his attitude. What's weird is that you would think after this many times, Jimmy, and I want your take on this, is you would think that eventually he would be like, F this, right? Like, how did it, like, eventually come out with the statement that we're all waiting for, which is like, something's the matter between the two of them, and this doesn't make sense, and now you need to protect your own reputation, the things that are going on, because first it was about, injury, and then it wasn't, then it was about performances, and now Gregg Berhalter says there's a few things in his game that need to change that I don't think can change in this amount of time, and I just wonder, like, if I'm him, he's actually still done a good job of saying he's going to fight back, he's going to keep going. But it still makes me wonder, like, is there something deeper in this? Because it's hard to write off a guy who is somehow trusted by Wolfsburg year after year. And yes, they're not in the best form this year, and they're find themselves in probably the worst position they've been in probably a decade. But he's still playing every game for Wolfsburg in the Bundesliga.
I think behind the scenes, he's probably saying F this to his closest people. Like, this is, I'm proven myself at the international level. I scored at a World Cup against Ghana in 2014. Like, I have history with the national team. Now, does that mean there's some entitlement that maybe came in? I don't know. I had some entitlement when I was playing for the national team. When I played in a World Cup, I just assumed I was going to make the following roster. It didn't happen for me. And I don't feel like I played or I was as sharp as I needed to be. It's not that I wasn't hungry. The edge had worn off a little bit. And that's a conversation for another time to get into the mental side of that. Is that happening with him? And it does happen with a lot of players. I don't think it's isolated to John Brooks. I think it's in his best interest to come out publicly and say all the things that he's been saying. He's been classy the whole time. He's also looking to make a move. Yeah. This summer, right? He's already announced he's going to leave Wolfsburg. MLS. and if he comes to MLS, okay. But it doesn't look good for him PR-wise if he's out there going, Gregg Berhalter's a dick. I never wanted to play for the team anyway. The guy doesn't know what he's doing. Like, would you want to sign
but Jimmy, that's social media, man. Like, it's the place where you throw all your quick emotions, and he's done a good job of not doing that.
No, and he's done a good job. Obviously, there's a ton of discipline in that because it would be very easy to get emotional and have a quick emotion, as you mentioned. But I think it's in his best interest to kill everything, kill everybody with kindness, play this one straight. But I assume because he's a human being that he's pissed off. He just can't show it. And I appreciate that he's holding his cards close because there is still an opportunity for him to go. Yeah. If guys get hurt or if he joins a team, whether it's MLS or anywhere else, and he just starts to kill it at the beginning of next season, or I guess if he joins MLS, he'll be joining midseason, there's still an opportunity for him to maybe sneak onto this team, but he's playing it exactly right. Charlie,
I have a question for Charlie. And then
let me give you guys first because you're both defenders. and I value.
Yeah, defenders of the integrity of the game.
and I value your opinions when it comes to that ability, and playing, because there are certain players that you've obviously played along the back line. No matter how good they are, you for whatever reason can't get on the same page. When I'm looking at John Brooks, and there's a lot of people saying, "Hey, he's the best center back in our pool," but ultimately, he's not the quickest player. And he can get caught out of position, especially when he's tracking strikers into the midfield. Is he, what my two question is he, one, the best center back in this pool? And two, who's his best partner? If he is the starter for the U.S. national team, let's say he's starting in the World Cup. He has this miraculous turnaround. Who is his partner? Who best complements his skill?
Jimmy, go ahead. I want to add a little context from my own experience.
Yeah, that's a good question.
When I became a center back later on in my career, I prided myself on being, when I'm in a back line, this is my back line. I'm going to own this. And I know, Jimmy, yours was similar, right? And I know that you played at the national team. You were coming in and you had to adapt to that. But I prided myself in that. And then when I played with Jamison Olave with New York Red Bulls, I was like, this is my back line. When I say step, we step. When I say drop, we drop, right? I need to move this line to make the game easier, more predictable for people around me. He didn't listen to any of it. He would drop when he wanted to drop. He would step when he wanted to step. And it was a really big challenge for me. And one that I don't think I even succeeded, or the team succeeded in, because I would have a word with the staff and I'd be like, hey, he's not listening. We're not on the same page. There's not a discipline here. We're not partners in this whole thing. He's just doing his thing to make his plays. And then I'm being left to clean up this mess of like gaps of being exposed, of our how we hold the line, of how we do things. And that comes down then to a trust, where now I wasn't trusting him. And I'm assuming if you're a coaching staff, you start to not trust your back line. And that was an experience for me where it seems easy of two players on the same page, we all agree, but that's not always the case. And I think if you look at John Anthony Brooks, he's going to be a leader of that back line. But sometimes the way in which he wants to do that, again, where he steps, where he drops, what the expectations, how he reacts, that then the team naturally has to react to, is a problem. And that costs you points, that costs you games, that costs you goals. And we are too far down qualifying or at the international level to be able to trust that in games of consequence.
No,
now, if it's friendlies and whatnot, I think it's different. But I wanted to give that sort of color, that if there's not that trust there, if you don't have somebody who owns that line and says, listen, the successes and the failures are on me, I'm going to own that and lead that. And everybody has to kind of fall in line, Jimmy. I don't know if you feel differently than that.
Well, no, here's the interesting piece about anytime you play on the national team. It's not that you don't want everybody to succeed, because if everybody succeeds, then everybody will end up benefiting from it. But if you're competing, like I actually competed with Gregg Berhalter to get on the 2006 World Cup team. He didn't like me. I was his competition, and we played with each other in the U.S. against Germany, and it didn't go well for us. And I remember Greg bitching me out because I didn't make a decision that he liked. And then it gets a little weird. You're like, wait, are we working together, or are we working against each other because we're competing for the same spot? So there's a lot of layers to that. Now, that was a friendly. I think when you get into meaningful competition, you got to throw all that crap out the window and just go out and play, because you need to get a result, because we all benefit from going to the World Cup. But with regard to John Anthony Brooks in particular, I think you need a partner, to answer Chuck's question, where you need somebody with recovery speed, because when he is beat, he's beat. He's not getting back in the play. We saw it against Canada at home, where Kyle Larin just ran past him. Ultimately, it wasn't even like, it could have been a foot race, and it wasn't, and Kyle Larin beat him to the spot. Like, that can't happen. And I actually think that was a nail in his coffin. That particular play, I think it opened up a conversation.
Well, we press. Wolfsburg doesn't press like that.
Right. That's another thing too. We like to play a high line, and I think you have to have either a partnership or center backs that can do a little bit of both. Even when I'm coaching defending, I always say, can you do two things at once? Can you angle your body where you can still, if the ball comes into the striker, can you still be in an area to make it difficult for them, but have your body angled so that the ball does go up over the top, or they try to flick something, you can still be in a position to start running with them as well. But if you just get caught flat all the time and they're playing balls up over the top, and it's just not a good look, or they're running past you, and maybe John Brooks got into there, and maybe there was a difficult discussion that was had. And to your point, Heath, or Charlie, I don't remember who said it, but if he's not going to be a starter, is he one of those guys that's going to be a little pissed that he's not a starter, and you just don't want to deal with that headache in the team? I mean, we've seen and we know plenty of players. We won't name any names. Not yet. We're still early in the podcast, so we're not going to name any names just yet. We'll get there.
Charlie,
go ahead. No, question. Go ahead.
No, I wanted to follow up with Charlie on this question. Charlie, I remember when you first came into the national team, And I remember that I thought about in the sense of like, man, this guy's got so many tools, but I don't see it yet. And then at a certain point, right, you rounded this corner and became the guy in the national team, the goal scorer, the striker. And I remember it taking a while for you. And I never, quite frankly, felt myself in the way that I did with the club team. I guess the question I'm trying to ask is, going back to this whole idea of like, he's got a few things that he can fix. Do you think those are actual things that he could fix? Are they confidence? Are they mental? Do you think John Anthony Brooks could do the things to be included in the World Cup or to get himself back in the national team in the way that you sort of found your rhythm and became, you went from being a national team level player to being a top national team level player? Do you think he has that at his age? And I guess almost contextualize your experience in that just so I can better understand what it could be like for John Anthony Brooks if he has any chance at all.
Yeah, I think the problem with comparing John Anthony Brooks now and myself back then was the age difference, right? I was coming into the national team and I was coming into a certain level of play, which was, the speed of play, the quickness, and I had all those intangibles that John Anthony Brooks doesn't have, the speed, but he does have the fight. He does have the size. I think, like I said, it depends on the tactics. If you're a club who's playing a high line and being ultra aggressive, more times than not, John Anthony Brooks is not going to be a best fit. Unless you had a center back who had blazing pace and could always anticipate the ball over the top. Because when you're playing against teams, typically, who are used to you pressing, their only advantage is in behind, counterattacks. That's not John Anthony Brooks' strength, to play against counter, to high line, to be isolated. As soon as you get him isolated, he's either following you or you're getting by him. That's going to be the confidence from any striker he's going to be playing against at that level. Now, I think for myself, even at the under 20 level, I always felt like I knew I could produce. I knew I could be at that level, but I couldn't slow myself down. I was just so eager to impress, so eager to get in behind. And I was always looking to make those runs and be on the score sheet. And then, I think at Hammarby, my coach, Tony Gustafsson at the time, he really helped me understand how I can get the best out of myself and how that benefits the team. And it's not necessarily goal scoring. It's, okay, the hold-up play. Can you just hold up the ball and link other players? Can you make decoy runs? Not necessarily always looking to get the ball with your runs, but maybe you're opening space for other players. Can you be someone who can dribble and combine? Add different elements to your game. And being in the Confederations Cup, that was when it really clicked for me. I came in off the bench in the first match against Italy. There's a corner kick that came right to my head. I looked at Gigi Buffon. It cleared the first defender, and I was thinking, oh my God, this is it. I'm going to score. And then I blazed it over. So for me, it was the match against Egypt that I felt I earned it through the training session just before, and it was my time to kind of shine and slow things down when I got on the pitch, and it worked. And then I never looked back. So I think for John Anthony Brooks, it's really, okay, I just got to start putting performance in by performance and try to grow with it. And obviously, Wolfsburg is playing much differently than the U.S. men's national team. So know what Gregg Berhalter wants. You have to do it with your club first and have that transition back to the national team.
Yeah, what I would say very quickly is I love the point you're making about that opportunity, that you created that opportunity, and then when it came to you, you took advantage of it. I guess the big thing for John Anthony Brooks is, will he get that opportunity again? Now, I want to give a shout out to Kai718, who has been supporting us not only here, but also for the U.S. Men's National Team Hour and the Que Golazo podcast. He is an OG supporter of what we've been doing. We love you, Kai. But he came on and said, one of his comments, you could argue, and Heath, I'm going to come to you first because I'm a little hot about this. I'm a little bit incredulous. You could argue that John Brooks is the best national team center back we've ever had. And I just put some respect on Eddie Pope's name, everybody. Put some respect on Eddie Pope's name. Maybe Carlos Bocanegra, Gucci. What? I need a second. Take it away, Heath.
Yeah. I mean, you could argue it. That's the whole point of an argument. You can argue anything you want. I mean, you can argue anything you want from any perspective. I do think when John Anthony Brooks was at his best, and you look at him when he's on the ball, the size that he has, the qualities that he has as a center back compared to those of your best center backs from Germany, he actually matches up well with a lot of the out speed aside, which a number of top center backs in the world don't have. Good in the air, great passer of the ball, left-footed, very clean. He certainly fits into that conversation. But again, he's playing in the back three now more often than not. He gets pulled out of positions. He needs the game to be set up in a certain way. Now, in the modern game, at the speed of which you have to play, the way in which the national team wants to press, I don't think he can be in that argument because it is a system-based, bringing out the best qualities in him. I do think that the national team has struggled with distribution, not having him on the field and being able to change the point of attack, or a player that can hit a long switch of play or slow the game down with his passing and things like that. He's got a lot of those skill sets that put him in the top category of our historical national team defenders. But when I think about that wider world of it, those players brought a different type of skill set, which we can go down the list. I know Jimmy's heated about that. Charlie, I don't know what your take is from the different generations.
Wait, Kai doubled down and said that Brooks is better than all of them. He doubled down and said he's better than all of them, and I'm sorry. What? Charlie, I need your 2 cents. Go.
Heath is trying to get under your skin. Aguchenyewu was better than John Brooks. Carlos Bocanegra was better than John Brooks. Eddie Pope was better than John Brooks.
Thank you.
Now, don't let that take away what John Brooks has done.
I won't.
The player that he is.
As long as you don't say Jimmy's better than John Brooks, then I'm good. No, Johnny Bornstein was a better center back than John Brooks.
I'm not looking for that. That's not who I'm saying.
You actually were, Jimmy. You actually were.
No.
I'm going to give it to you.
Listen, my talent was commitment. My talent wasn't like the talent that we think about. My talent was commitment and discipline and trying to get better than I was the day before. It didn't necessarily mean I hit the heights of John Anthony Brooks, who I think is a tremendous player and he's got great feet. But I just maybe if he'd stayed healthy. I mean, if Aguchenyewu didn't hurt and have that significant knee injury, he was playing at some big clubs around the world, and I think he would have showcased what he's about. I got to play next to these guys. I went to college with Carlos Bocanegra. I've been around these guys, and obviously it would help so my bias, there was going to be some bias.
Look how small Jimmy's quads are if you're watching.
I know,
this,
man. Even Charlie in retirement has bigger quads than me.
Does he have calves?
No. Jimmy just got fight, dude. That's what he's got.
That's it. I got fight. That's my talent.
There's a little monster inside of that body of his that just went hard all the time.
It did. That's it.
I would have loved to see Jay Demerit and Jimmy Conrad side by side in the.
We did. We played in the Copa America together.
Was it in your primes?
Yeah, for the most part. Yeah. I mean, Jay was basically emerging to take my spot, which it's fine. That's how it goes. So he was maybe a year or two away from like peak Jay. And I was probably maybe a year later from my peak looking back. But we were pretty close. And it would have been nice to have more games with him. But the ones we got thrown into were some big ones against some big opponents with Argentina and Paraguay in the Copa America. But we're kind of similar in terms of how we approach the game for sure. That's a good shout, Jay Demerit.